Week 7 walking, 31st of May to the 6th of June 2024. My happy path is not on tarmac and not in London. Soz. Distance walked 54.8 miles. Duration walked 16 hours, 58 minutes and 57 seconds. Week 7 started with the play aspects of my London visit as I attended a reunion for a unit I worked back in the late 90s and early 2000s. However, before that, I needed to get my miles in, so I was up and out of the Victory Services Club before 5 a.m. 3 laps of Hyde Park and Kensington Gardens, and 12.2 miles later, I'd succeeded in getting eye contact and hellos back from 8 people. Result. Remembering how my legs didn't like too much walking on tarmac, I stayed just off the paths around the park or on the smaller dirt tracks, and my walking companions were horses and riders who were out doing the final practices for Trooping the Colour, which was happening on Sunday. I stopped, transfixed by the sun reflecting off the puddle held by the tarmac, and considered it a portal into another world. Simply wonderful, and a reminder that we do not need grand scenery to be truly inspired. Just some tarmac, a puddle, and sunshine. Another 4 people acknowledged my existence and said hello back to me on the first walk of day 2. I got back before breakfast happy that I had got responses from 16 other people in the last 3 days. Whilst I talk a lot about observing the world and learning, I found out that I don't always live up to my own lessons. I had captured my second walk of the day as our group walked to the Anchor Bank side on London's South Bank for a reunion. It's a pub. When planning the route from Victory Services to the pub, I completely ignored the fact that I'd observed Trooping the Colour being practised, or that a large part of Trooping the Colour would be around Buckingham Palace, and that our route past Buck Palace was likely to be restricted. And so we achieved the slow walk with multiple reroutes due to the metal fencing barring our way and large numbers of people moving around us. What added even more to the chaos was throngs of Real Madrid and Borussia Dortmund fans filling the streets as the Champions League's final had come to London, and different fan sites had been set up around the city. Compared to the cyclists that had annoyed me on the first evening of my visit, all the fans were in great spirits and were intent solely on having fun. I left the Victory Services Club late morning on day 3 to head back to King's Cross, but forgot to start my watch at a hotel. So I added 10 minutes to my time and checked Google Maps for the actual distance I walked. It was great to be reminded of how easy it is to meet someone you haven't seen for years, particularly when you're either serving or ex-military. I walked back to King's Cross with Luke, and just after leaving, he was spotted by a Geordie lad who we went through basic training with and hadn't seen for about 30 years. The good news, however, lasted only a few minutes after I parted company with Luke, when I was almost run over by another cyclist who decided to go through the red light of a pedestrian crossing as I walked across the road on a green man. Wanker. Back home and back to the familiar sights, sounds and smells of Granton-on-Spey. Day 4 took me around one of my 6 familiar walking routes, walking down the old military way through Anagach Woods, along the road to the old bridge and River Spey, before heading away from the river onto the Speyside Way before taking a detour to a local landmark called the Hangman's Tree, and then heading back past the co-op and home. Why is something called what it is? Sometimes it's based on historical facts, other times we're not sure. Each of us has quirky names for well-known things as well as using commonly recognised words. I've been unable to find any reliable information regarding whether the Hangman's Tree was actually used as a gallows, or just that somehow it became known as such. Irrespective of the truth, it is commonly and widely known as the Hangman's Tree, so I'm sticking with that. It's a bit like how I am commonly known as the greatest leadership coach to walk this earth. Aside from the delusions of grandeur and the familiar walk, some small things had changed, and in this few days of being here, I noted significantly greater numbers of song thrushes and loads of mallards on the spey with their ducky fluffball babies. As Annalena would say, so cute. I was out again early on day 5, heading along the Speyside way to Cromdale Bridge, before returning along the river and back. Starting at 8:25 a.m, I walked for 2 hours and 14 minutes, so was home in time to sit down with the kids for breakfast before they got ready and headed off for school. My morning travels saw me sharing the space with 3 grey herons, 2 dippers, loads more mallards and ducky fluffballs, curlew, mergansers and various small waders that I didn't recognise. Day 6 was an evening walk, and I didn't even start until just before 7 p.m. Walking the dreaded Gorton Loop on the trails above our house, there are lots of different weather to be experienced. I had wind, rain, sun, cloud and cold. What predominated was the wind, and I observed lots of small fledglings struggle to deal with the blustery weather. I saw my first wheatear of the challenge, as well as 2 deer and hearing a cuckoo. Maybe because of the wind I failed to see or hear the curlew and wondered if they'd stayed on the ground because of the windy conditions. Even with the walk being my fastest so far, 16 minutes 49 seconds per mile, I get home at 10:40 p.m. Day 7 is an exact replica of day 4's walk, and I complete what is described in my diary as a slow bimble, walking, chatting with people, and a generally lethargic walk. Very relaxed and very easy after yesterday's quick walk. End of week reflections. I like visiting London, yet the behaviour of the cyclist makes it a challenge for me. I reflect on the tension in my mind between letting go of what I cannot control, i.e. the cyclist, and wanting to batter them just for being rude and dangerous. I reflect on my preference for the trails that I share with wildlife and no one else. I acknowledge this and plan for it. What are you acknowledging and planning for? Thank you.